This lecture is about a flow. I recommend that everyone finish the lecture at least once and understand the overall concept of this lecture and then start your own practice. You may not start your own practice before finishing the lecture. First, we're going to create a pattern. I'm going to use star and create some kind of a mashabia. And for now, I set the number of sets to 8. And I turned on my snap so I could snap to the grids. So I have my first star. I'm going to make this into a surface using planar surface. Not to confuse ourselves, I hide the curve. Now I have only a surface, a star-shaped surface. I'm going to make multiple copies using a command called array. So the number in x direction I set to 10 and press enter. I'm going to also set the y direction also to 10 and press enter. And I'm going to keep the z direction as 1 because we're going to create a two-dimensional x and y direction array. We do not need a three-dimensional array. So once I'm done this, press enter. Now I need to decide the space between each item. This is just a faster way of creating multiple copies. So I'm going to set my array as this size. So once I'm done, I have a real complex pattern. One thing we could do before we do the array is probably trim off part of it so that there will be some holes. Instead of a whole surface, there will be some place penetrating through. So I will do another attempt. So I'm going to just press escape. I will probably do another star using the same center and press shift. And maybe I do something like this. I have not tried this yet, but I think it might be interesting. So now what I'm going to do is to trim off the center part. So using trim, select the cutting object, which is a curve, the star, press enter, and click in the middle, and then press enter. So now I have a shape sort of like, now they're kind of individual. If you like, you could probably hide the curve again. We only wanted the shape. And at this moment, I could group them so that they will not fall apart when we create more complex shape. So I'm going to continue, go to transform toolbar and select array. We'll do the same 10 by 10 by 1. And the distance between this, you just need to click twice and to set the distance for x and y. So let's click something like this. This is kind of interesting. However, the middle part is still totally overlapping. There's no penetration. So maybe I press escape and maybe try a little bit the bigger distance. So in order to create, I would assume if I select this direction, yeah, so if I change the distance of X and Y, I could create a very interesting pattern right away. With all of this, I'm happy with it. Just press enter. So the whole array is created. Now I'm going to group the whole thing. So now I have a pattern. I could even create the depths for this pattern, but I have to do it before I do array. So I have to do it with individual shape. You would never want to modify individual shapes after you've done the array, because then you will have too much to modify. So this is a pattern. And now I'm going to create a curvy surface. A curvy surface can be very simple. It could always just be a curve of some sort. If we want to be more elaborate, or making a real design, we could probably modify a little bit and making it more design look curve. I'm happy with this. Press escape. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Press escape to come out from the control point level. So now I'm going to extrude. In my previous lecture, I let the pattern stand up and follow the direction of the curve. However, this is not necessary. You can draw a base surface already at this point. You don't have to rotate the pattern and change the construction plane. However, I will continue to explain what are the base surface and construction plane in my later lecture. Construction plane is a very important knowledge, but not essential for this lecture. I'm going to let this pattern flow along the surface. As you can see, they're not the same size. However, you can always do flow. Just for my own comfort, I rotate a little bit. However, you can the pattern can be anywhere and any size. It can always be applied, and using flow. This looks good. So I'm going to start to use flow. The tool to use flow is to go to transform again. So I'm going to click on this. As I pointing to this toolbar, is shows flow along surface. However, in case that you really do not know where to find this, is pretty simple. It's under transform toolbar and is sort of at the corner. So in case you really don't remember, you can always type in flow. There are two flows. One is a flow, one is a flow along surface. I'm going to use a flow along surface because I have a surface as the background that will allow the pattern to be flowed onto. So I select the flow along surface, select object, which is the pattern, press enter, and select a base surface. At this point, I don't really have a base surface for this. This is just a pattern. So actually, I need to create a base surface. So I'm going to come out from this and create a base surface simply using rectangular tool. I can easily just drag from one end to the other end. The only thing is that it's a little bit difficult to draw according to this surface. As you can see, it sort of did not meet. Now it's doing it on the ground and maybe doing it here and there at the right angle, because the pattern now is at angle with the axis. So I'm going to have to construct the surface following the direction of this surface. Now I have another tool to introduce to you. It's called construction plane. Put your mouse over the top toolbar and click on it and expand this toolbar, and expand the toolbar again. Then you will have many options. So what I want to do is I want to set my axis, the X and Y and Z, to follow the shape that I already created. So after I done that, you will see all the grids will be rotated following the direction of the shape. So I will use the easiest one, which is use 3 points. You know that 3 points defines a surface, a plane. So that's the easiest way to define a plane. So I'm going to use this. There are also many other options. So I'm going to click on one, actually pretty much anywhere on the pattern. So now, as you can see, I pretty much rotate my grids according to the shape. So now I can draw anything. If I draw anything that will be on the same surface as the pattern. I will talk about a little bit more how this will work. So now it should be very easy to create a surface. So click on rectangular surface tool and just drag from one corner to another corner. So now I have a surface which is overlapping with my pattern. I rotated my pattern, therefore it became difficult to draw the base surface. So if you did not rotate your pattern like what I did in the lecture, you do not need to use construction plane. Come back to the toolbar and select object, which is the pattern that we created. Press enter. And now since we have a base surface, that I can select the base surface, which is the surface that we just created. And next thing is to select the target surface. So what the flow does is apply the pattern from the base surface to the target surface. Okay, so now it's looking a little bit, there's definitely problems with this. Problem is right here because the end is sticking out from our the base surface is smaller than the pattern. That's why they got stretched. So I'm going to create another base surface. This time I'm going to do a base surface that's bigger. I'm not too concerned about the dimension at this point. Yeah, so this surface now is bigger than the pattern. So let's try to do the same thing again and delete this and unhide. So now let's do flow along surface again. Select the object, it's again the pattern. So the pattern is the group, it's not the surface, so it's a group. Select the group, press enter, select the base surface, and then select the target surface. Another thing is important is you want to, if you have a specific requirement, you may want to match from corner to corner. In this case, I clicked here, so I'm going to click on the other corner, matching corner. So now we've done this pattern again, which flows. The corner still feels a little bit stretched. The reason that the flowed pattern got stretched is because the difference between the base surface and the target surface. In terms of the proportion, the base surface is pretty much like a square. The width and the length are very similar with a very narrow difference. However, the target surface is longer and narrower in terms of the proportion. Therefore, when the pattern applied from the base surface to the target surface, the whole pattern got stretched. So I'm going to open homework folder and look at flow 4-09. As you can see, most of this is constructed the same way, and this flow is done by repeating or flow the pattern along an enclosed surface, like a ring. That's pretty much the same method, and this one is flow a character onto a curvy surface. And now you may have a question of What's the difference between flow and the projection? So let's look at the toolbar. Flow. Flow has more flexibility than projection because the flow can stretch the pattern, the original pattern. It doesn't matter how big the original pattern is, you can always flow onto any size of the surface, while projection, the size is really the same except it is projecting it to a surface. So it doesn't change the size of your original pattern. And also a flow can be done, flow along surface can be done for shape, which we just did, and all of this are shape. And the projection works only with curves. So you could not project a pattern onto a surface. You can only project a curve onto a surface. So this is a flow. And the next topic is solid flow. So these two are very similar. So as you know, there's two types of flow. One is a flow along surface, one is simply just flow. So I just type in flow and it comes out two options. We select flow. So this flow is a little bit different because what we have now is no longer a pattern, but this is a solid. And also flow does not need a base surface or target surface. It follows line. So with this shape right here and with this solid right here and a few lines, we could create quite an elaborate structure. This is very useful tool while you do your design because most of the time we can easily construct some solid shapes like this by simply doing extrusion and repetition. And then if we use the flow, we could really twist and change the form and be much more interesting. Before I do flow, I would group all of them together as one. I will select everything and press, just press enter. So now they're all together as one. So let's do a flow. We have a couple of lines here. So the baseline is actually the one that I'm highlighting now because this follows this whole structure from this corner to that corner. Another baseline is this. Both are highlighted in red. Both are in red. So this goes this direction. So this is sort of a surface has two directions. And there are some curvy lines. So first I'm going to let this whole structure bend. So how do I bend? I'm using flow to make it bend. So I type in flow, or you could also go to the same toolbar, but you need to click and expand. There's one is flow along curve. Yeah, that's pretty much flow. So select flow or come to the toolbar or type in either way and select object to flow. So this is our object that we want to modify, we want to flow. Press enter, and the base curve I could select this one. So when I select this as the base curve, this will be the target curve. So by doing that, I hide my original shape. So we pretty much bended the whole thing from standing up to a curvy position. So now I'm going to let everything flow another time. Type in flow and select object, which is this one. Press enter, select base. I would use this line now as the base curve, and the target curve I'm going to use this one. So as you can see, once I done two flow, I modified and made something relatively very simple become something more elaborate and has a lot of a design message in it. So I'm just going to delete both of them and unhide my original shape, and then start to think about some of the issues that we just see. You probably did not see when we did the flow, the the first flow, this whole structure being moved away from the ground, so it's above the ground. So that's probably not what we want. We need to fix that. We want the whole structure, once we're done, still follow and still standing on the ground. So let's type in flow. Select object, which is this one. Select, press enter, and base curve. Last time I was selecting two of the top end. So this time I think I would just select, because where you click on will affect the result. So I'm going to click on here, and I could right away click, but I think there's something other stuff that we want to look at it from all the options. One is copy. Last time we select the yes. That's why when we did our first flow, the original shape is still there. We still want this shape to be remained. So we will keep that one as yes. Rigid, yes or no. Rigid is, I think most of the time depends. Let's see what's the difference between yes and no. And stretch. Stretch is very clear, because sometimes you could flow something very short and then stretch to the length of the target curve. So I would say I would stretch so that the height matches. So now I'm going to click on the bottom of my target line. So we accomplished this. What happened is this second structure is still on the ground, just probably by clicking at the lower end. Now we're going to do another flow, is by flowing this and along the longer curvy line. And I would modify just a little bit on the line. I'm going to, as you can see, that's the distance now for the length is pretty much this. And this curvy line is very likely to be much longer than the original baseline. So if you do not use the option of stretch, you end up with a pretty short flow following the dimension of the original line. So once I'm done this, I'm going to type in flow and do a second flow. Select object, which is this one, and press enter. For the first demo, I'm just going to keep the stretch as no. As you can see, this, if I do not stretch the whole thing to follow the length of the longer line, it's probably just going to end up somewhere here. So I will keep the stretch as no and select my base curve. I'm going to use this near end and target curve as well. So as you can see, this did not follow the whole length of it because I used no for stretch. So I'm going to do another one.